All right, so we're live now.
So welcome everyone to our special meeting of the Committee of the Whole, October the 20th, October the 29th. And this meeting is going to be mostly pretty well all about our budget. And before we begin, I'd just like to say and welcome to Montague, Stephen Rothwell. Stephen is with us, and he's our new manager of public works. So welcome, and I'm glad you're with us, Stephen. We look forward to your ideas. And also we have as our backup Andrew, our treasurer, and Miles, our fire chief. So and Jasmine, thanks for helping us through this. So it's going to be. I just should also remind all of council that if you have any disclosure of interest, you can declare it now or anytime during any part of the meeting. And also welcome to all of our public. I hope we have lots, and maybe later we'll be able to find out how many are online with us. But I'm glad that many of you hopefully are with us. So we're going to go on to the only report we have, which is about 300 pages long, so we'll be here for maybe a while. But that's yours, Andrew, and I'll give you the screen, and that's for our 2021 budget. And it's going to be a high, as you say, a high level discussion, and not getting into the weeds too much, hopefully. So thanks, Andrew.
So Reeve Dobson, just prior to us starting,
yes.
There's a motion to accept
We
the
have
agenda.
I have our one motion here. I don't have a mover and seconder on it, but I'll read it. That's the special meeting of Council of the Whole agenda dated October the 29th, 2020. Be approved as circulated. And I need a mover and seconder, please. So moved by Claus and seconded by Karen. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Jasmine. So I'll give it back to you, Andrew. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So, like I've mentioned in the report, what we'd like to try for this meeting is it's not necessarily a presentation of a draft budget. What it is, it's almost more like a budget workshop is the hope here. So in the same way that we've already sat down with the department heads and looked at the budget for 2020 year to date, and a bit of looking ahead as to what's kind of showing up on the radar for 2021. Now it'd be the same kind of idea to do that with council. So I guess, we'll see how things go. Maybe it'll be a short meeting. It's hard to say. I provided a lot of attachments in the report for reference. It's not something we're going to go through all of that content in this meeting. So then I've also presented another shorter presentation to give a bit of forum to this evening's meeting. I emailed that out this afternoon. I hope everyone received that. And if there's anyone from the public watching tonight, they can go to the Facebook page or to the township website and get that same document if they'd like to see it, to know how they're following along with us. So from that document, I'll just say a couple things as we get going here. Once again, looking for input. I expect council might ask some questions that I haven't expected, and we'll record those and we can follow up on those as we prepare for the first draft of the budget. And so I see tonight as, an opportunity to discuss proposed capital projects, look at priorities, look at service levels, and the expectations as we look towards 2021. I included the township mission and vision statements in that presentation, just sort of a nice reminder of how things flow into the budget and tie in with that. And the page after that, I have a page that says mid and long-term strategic items from the strategic plan. What I put there was, after reviewing the chart in the strategic plan, quite a few of the things in there from a few years ago, council's been accomplishing those and moving from short-term to mid-term and even into long-term actions. Things like developing the asset management plan, website upgrades, branding, developing some more long-term planning for roads, developing a plan for repairing Rosedale Hall and doing repairs, and building reserves. And so the things I listed on this page are a few things that are somewhat outstanding, even though I feel they probably will become encompassed in the recreation study that's taking place now. So, and then after that, the thought is to look at the operating departments first, which might not have a whole lot of things, and then move into capital. So under operating departments, this kind of ties in back to the last council meeting where we presented the third quarter statements for the different departments. And I noted that things were basically happening as planned. So from that perspective, the 2021 budget for a bulk of the departments could be very similar to 2020. And then I've noted, the first one is administration. I noted a couple items that are newer. One is sending e-notices for tax bills, and the other is replacing an old laptop. So I guess we could start there. And if council has questions as we go down the list, we could probably address each department, and then when we finish there, move on to the next one.
Which area are we going to start with, Andrew?
Administration for operations.
Oh, the administration, because that's the first one, or the e-notices, you mean?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Karen?
So is that the
Karen?
software that you're talking about in order to be able to email the tax bills out to residents?
Yeah, so the software program that we use, Munisoft, it has different modules that you can sign up for. So right now, that particular module we haven't paid for in the past or had use of. So we could add that to what we have now. And the thought there is with municipal tax bills, the resident has to give permission for us to email them versus mail them. So we would have to get a permission form and receive it from the residents. And it allows us to tick off in the checkbox once they've acknowledged they would like to have an email version, that we can send it to them, and we can pick and choose who we do. And for each one that we do, we basically start saving money on postage, envelopes, paper, staff time, and things like that to offset that cost.
Follow up,
Karen, then I'll go to Klaus.
So if you purchase this software, does it allow you to have other abilities, like for example, the pay stubs or any of your like accounting of invoices, etc.? Does that open it up for the other parts of our accounting software? Or is it just the tax bill?
Not for payroll, because it's a separate program.
Okay.
And I'm not sure about water bills.
Okay.
We could do water bills with that.
So still under administration, because we've got another laptop we bought for this year. So will
Right.
this then be enough to do the office, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, so this one would be for the clerk administrator. It's an aging laptop. It's quite a few years, several years old. And I don't believe it has the ability, that specific laptop, to do video for Zoom meetings and stuff like that. We actually have we had the IT people here all day today doing the final part of our server conversion for a file server. And they have one other laptop they're concerned with that they'll know more about in the next few days or a week.
Okay,
But we're almost up to date.
Hey, thanks, Karen. Klaus, please.
Thanks, Reeve. I think it's an excellent idea, Andrew. Everyone's on e-transfers now and e-notices and so on. Is there a cost to this? Roughly, do you know?
Yeah, so the cost there, I've listed the $1,400. That's an annual amount. So
Oh,
that will happen every year. In
So
addition
you pay for the service. You can't buy the program. You got to pay for the service.
Yeah, every year it renews, and it's in addition to the Munisoft software that we already use. So
Okay.
it's part of their program.
Okay, thank you.
So any other questions on the administration? So Andrew, if we move on then, I guess, to the next one, is that okay?
Yeah, and if you have anything in addition to what I've listed, I'll record those or make note of them. So if there's things you'd like us to look into from the staff side of things.
Or if there's things that we think of in the next few days.
That's right.
We need,
yeah.
Send it to you. Karen, Karen, please.
Just a question, sorry. Because of COVID, right? It's all about being able to offer services or make things still work during COVID. Would the software for our e-notices of tax bills, possibly water bills, or anything else that we need fall under the ability to write it off under the grant money that the government's given us for COVID?
That's kind of what I'm thinking in 2020, but then this would be an ongoing cost.
Yep, that's okay. Yeah, but
yeah.
Okay, because I get the licensing side. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so street lighting?
Yeah, so for street lighting, I didn't put any specific notes for that, but I remembered that when we had budget discussions last year for 2020, it came up partway through the budget discussion, and it was almost, I think, maybe felt that it was a little far into the discussion to kind of give it its due attention. So I put it on there just to put it out to council to see if they have any thoughts or whether it's okay the way it is, or whether there's things there we should look into to include in the first draft of the budget.
So Andrew, now council and staff, everybody can correct me here, but I think we were having some discussions, and I think some of us thought about different places that maybe should or shouldn't have street lighting, but that was a few months ago, and I thought that we had possibly decided that maybe Public Works would kind of do some preliminary work and come back to us with a report of some priorities they think might be needed. So I thought that's kind of where we left it. And I don't know if Jasmine or Stephen would like to respond to that, but because otherwise we will probably just each decide if there's any that we think any locations we think should have one. Do you recall anything about that, Jasmine? Or
I know that council, sorry, I can turn my video back on. I know that council has discussed it a number of times. I don't have the ability to pull up the like our council assigned task list at the moment, but I can look into that. I think ultimately the recommendation for streetlight locations should come from Public Works. I guess the question is, the council can want us to do that. And if we have provided the direction, that's great. But if we haven't, and council does want us to look into it, we can go ahead and do that for the budget process.
Because am I correct, Andrew, that right now there's no money in the budget for street lighting because we did what we did last year?
Right. So unless you wanted to add it for 2021.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to go to clause.
So yeah, for street lighting, it was basically the cost of the utilities.
Yes.
Like no other capital money.
Yeah. So there's no other capital right now. Okay. So any questions? I'll go to clause.
Yeah, I had brought up the street lighting situation several times at council meetings, and I would like to see something in the budget. There was a resident had also brought out the fact that street lighting should be done within the township of certain areas and that. And I'd like to see a report back from our Public Works Department on street lighting. I guess maybe we can feed information to the public works manager as to where we feel street lighting should happen.
So guess that'll be that if we have consensus, then that'll be staff direction, I guess, to you, Stephen, and you can work on that. But Ian, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Claus is saying. We start with the budget with everything that we, you know, your wish list in it, and then as things go and we look at how everything falls down, then we you know, start trimming as if needed or as required. But
So I think, so do we have consensus then for Stephen to come back with a report on this? Ian?
yeah, I do for sure.
And Claus, I think, and Karen,
Yes.
Jeff.
I've been vocal before about not really open for street lighting and adding more to that, but we have consensus, so we'll go forward.
So right now, at the present time, it'll be the ongoing maintenance and upkeep and usage, I guess you could say, of the lighting, unless we add any new capital to that budget line. So, okay, thanks. So you've got that to Stephen then. Thanks. So moving on, I think then to recreation. Sorry, Ian.
Yeah, I think Jasmine has a question, and so do I. Go ahead, Jasmine.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry,
I
Jeff.
just wanted to
You're
confirm.
you're sort of dark where you are. It's hard for me to see. Sorry.
That's fine.
So I think council members, if you do have any feedback in terms of areas where you want to see street lighting, you can feel free to send it in. Keeping in mind that our recommendations may reflect, you know, availability of poles and the actual servicing itself. But certainly if there's ideas, you can absolutely send it in to Steve and we can review those locations as well.
Perfect.
Under the, I guess I was thinking about under street lighting that sometimes where maybe street lighting can't work, like there's no pole, there may be other methods of drawing, like maybe more signage or painted lines on the pavement or road, or if it's pavement or whatever might work also. But I guess that would come under something other than street lighting. But okay, so Ian, I'll go to you, please.
No, that was actually my point. I was just going to bring up the exact same thing that Jasmine just did. So
Yeah.
we're
Okay.
pretty well. Thank you.
So seeing nothing else for this, then we'll move on to recreation. Back to you, Andrew.
All right. One other quick note, just to finish off street lighting, is it was a 3-year internal finance, and 2020 is the final year of that. So that will be you won't see that in the 2021 first draft. The internal repayment for the 23,000 and change, that'll be completed. Great. Under recreation, just a couple notes. One is the question of putting in some amount for events that is not otherwise in the budget, and another amount for soundproofing replacement, which I believe is part of the Recreation Committee's meetings.
Okay. Just because we're talking about budget and recreation, I have a question for you, Andrew.
Right.
Do we know if we're getting any money back from the cost sharing that we paid to Smith Falls because of lack of usage for COVID-19?
Nothing specifically at this time.
Okay, thanks.
I think, Jasmine?
Yeah.
So,
yes,
yes,
I do have to apologize to Andrew. I was supposed to have one other item in this item for operating, and that's for the fencing for Rosedale Hall. So that's on me.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Andrew. And I guess that's something that we could talk about now, or we could bring it back at a future draft. But to add a little bit of background for the events, we're kind of just seeing right now the budget for events for the committee is $1,500. So we were seeing if we could potentially increase that a little bit. As we were, unfortunately, we weren't able to deliver on the event, but as we were planning the Rosedale Hall, inaugural event, we did kind of run up into budget pressures. Like, it wasn't quite enough to be able to host an event like that. So if we want to be able to do more next year, I think we'll probably need to increase that budget a little bit. And the other item that the committee is talking about is replacing the soundproofing panels. They're quite old. They're not in the best repair, and a little bit of investment, what I think would make the looks of the hall, improve quite a bit. So sorry about that, Andrew, about the fencing. I should have included that.
No problem.
Yes. Yes, Karen, please.
So Jasmine, on that line of fencing, what are you estimating for a price?
Don't have an estimate at this time, but I can get one for our next meeting.
About that question of Karen's, Jasmine, when we're talking about fencing, are we talking about fencing just around the playscape, or are we talking about fencing that whole area?
It'd be fencing around the playscape is my understanding of the comments, but certainly if council wants to look at fencing the whole thing, that's something we could look at.
Well, the only reason I mention that is because as more and more activity hopefully happens at the Rosedale Hall, more and more kids are going to be maybe there running around. And I guess I just thought that rather than having a small, short fence around a playscape, there's still all kinds of other areas for them to run, and we're doing it to keep them off the road, I suppose. So I think my suggestion would be maybe more than less fencing, but that's just how I feel about it. I think anybody, Karen?
I would be actually more just around the playscape, because if you're going to be doing the work on the septic, you don't want any fencing around it. If you have to do any maintenance, you don't want the fencing around it. But I was going to ask a question more so on the events then. What kind of events is the rec committee looking to host for 2021?
Well, I think for 2021, certainly we've had a lot of discussions around, Christmas time and the fall. And we've also talked a number of times about doing like either a harvest or some sort of like harvest, not a harvest festival, that's not the right word, but to have something that involves almost like a farmer's market. Instead of doing it, we'll do it like once or twice a year rather than on a weekly basis. Those were the ideas that we've had. I'm sure we could probably expand on those ideas.
So next question.
Yes.
So follow up is, on any of these activities, are they looking at cost recovery items, or is it all just at taxpayers' expense?
We haven't gone into that detail of discussion when it comes to planning, but I think cost recovery is difficult in those types of events.
So any other questions on this recreation? I'm wondering, I haven't thought too much about how to present this, but under the recreation budget, I'm wondering if council would like to entertain the idea of any money being spent on I guess this would be if we were ever able to use that second soccer pitch that we keep talking about, that we've never been able to use. If we could ever get that decision made that we would be able to use that field, then there's going to be expenses like tree planting, little shelters for the kids to play, possibly accessing it from our 22 acres. I know there's a lot there, but eventually I think my belief is that we may have to spend some money there to upgrade that field if we ever get using it. Does anybody have any ideas on that? Andrew?
I just think we're sort of jumping ahead into capital now.
Okay. Okay,
That's
very good.
definitely a point that's to be made in the capital portion.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah.
That is one of the things I did want to find out from council, though.
Okay.
So we could pause that for a moment and then come right back to it.
Thanks. Okay, and now, did I see any other hands in on this part? Okay, then moving on, building.
Bill?
Building planning. Oh, Jeff?
So I guess sorry. I just want to clear. So we're good for bringing that into the budget, like the $5,000 to make sure we're going to be talking about it, the 2,000 for the soundproofing.
Mhm.
That's basically what we're good with.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the assumption, unless you guys say no, absolutely not. We don't want to see it at all.
Now, are we now for the septic? Does that fall under more capital stuff?
That's in the capital, yes.
That's in the capital, right? Okay, that's right. Okay, all right. Thanks. Let's move on.
So regarding the, yes, Karen?
All of our discussions right now anyway are just preliminary.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything can go in and then we just, in the end, we see where we're at and go from there.
Mhm.
So, and
Unless,
regarding
like
the
you
septic,
said, Dave, you don't want to consider it at all. That's fine.
Yeah.
yes, but regarding the septic, my thought would be that if the septic should be done, all of it should be done first anyways, before we maybe get into the fencing part of it. So, I think the septic, and I thought that we as a council had decided that we were going to move forward and get the septic system done. So that's certainly will be one of the, I'm sure it'll be on one of the budget lines here. So moving on then to the building and planning.
All right,
Andrew?
So for building and planning, 2021 will be time to do a new development charges study. And I've estimated that might be somewhere around $12,000. And the amount of that can be funded from the development charges that we collect through the building department. So in that respect, it wouldn't add to the tax bill specifically.
Ian?
So just to clarify, which I think I'm right, but Jasmine, this is the year that we do the review, right?
Yes.
So I guess my question is for Andrew. Andrew, have you sucked every ounce of development charge money out of where it needs to be and allocated it to the budget?
We had planned to be very close for the end of 2020 and have, possibly between around 13,000 left. But what's happened recently in the meantime is the building department's had a very busy year. So it's looking like they might collect about 50,000 more in development charges than they expected from our budget. So I've got to look at that right away in November and see how that's going to play into our first draft budget and the end of this year, and definitely looking to utilize it as much as possible.
Okay, so you're gonna let us know, obviously, if there's a surplus and we can decide where or what we can do with it. I guess at that point in time.
Yeah, that's going to happen very soon.
Thank you.
Karen?
Just a reminder that, Andrew, you have to split building and planning in our budget because we have to keep those expenses separate because certain things cannot be used for other items. We had that discussion a couple of meetings ago on the accounting side that they have to be kept separate.
To in regards to the year-end surplus, is that what we're talking about?
That's where that came in, but that's why we do need to keep these records separate because we've got them lumped together and you need to create an additional account to keep those two items separate. So right now, everything's all being lumped in. We need to split them up to have true actuals between those two departments.
All right, I'll take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything on this then, Andrew?
No, that was it for that one.
Okay, and no other questions from anyone? Okay, then we're moving on. So the next page there, Andrew, is the breakdown, I guess, of the roads.
Yes, Public Works. So it's information that Steve provided me, and maybe I'll let him talk a little bit about it, but essentially this would be the continuation of the gravel maintenance plan that we started into in 2020. And just talking to council to, to illustrate the continuation of that. So maybe I'll let Steve talk for a moment about that.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, so I basically took the roads needs study, what they had suggested and what Jamie had brought forth last year in 2020, and used the 2019 condition rating to try and isolate the roads that are need to be upgraded away. And then we used the lead hand sent me a list of the roads that, since he's been here for 5 years, roads they have not put any gravel on. So we put some of those up in the 2021 roads to be completed. And you'll see just kind of my list down is kind of from condition of 4, which is very poor. I've tried to isolate those as the more urgent roads to get completed. And then a couple of years down the line, we'll get up to the 6 and 7 condition rating on the chart. And we're just kind of looking for feedback from you guys as to if you'd like more or less kilometers of road done. And on the next page, you'll see how much that we're planning, about roughly 24.5 kilometers of roads per year for the next 4 years.
And sorry, did you say 25?
24.5, yeah, basically 25 kilometers.
How does that compare to the past 2 or 3 or 4 years?
So in looking at the past, it's kind of been up and down. There's been a lot less, there's been more. It's kind of been up and down consistently for the past many years.
I did see somebody's hand. Yes, Claus.
Thank you, Ray. Steve, this 2021 then, is this just gravel application or is it actually some repair of these roads?
That's right. This is just strictly the gravel application for these roads.
Okay. I guess I'm going to pick on one particular road, Pioneer Road. Isn't Pioneer Road some areas where it's kind of soft that should be repaired and built up before gravel goes on?
And that's where we're looking for a suggestion from council as to where they'd like to go with this list. I mean, it would be ideally to open up Pioneer Road a bit more, get more sunlight in, and there are spots where we could do road construction, but it's going to be an added cost much greater than what's there right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Ian?
Just a thought.
Sorry, Claus, were you finished?
Yes, it was just a thought. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the thought is good because I think we probably should go back to have a little discussion about the Pioneer Road, because a few years ago it was like the top priority road. I think Pioneer and Holbrook. But Ian, please.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Deputy Reeve Vandermeer is saying. You know, just going ahead and putting dirt back on these roads or gravel back on the roads, just let it sink back into with no base. It's a fruitile type thing. We have a little bit extra money. I think that we should be probably looking at doing a little bit better of a job, or maybe doing a different stage of upgrade on them. Maybe. My question is the Montague boundary roads that are on here. Jasmine would probably know maybe a little bit better right now, but the costs that are on there, are they shared, Jasmine, with Beckwith and Ottawa, etc.? So the cost that we're seeing, that's half. Is that our cost, or is that the full cost, and we get half back from the other municipality?
I think Steve's prepared to answer this question. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, that is the full cost right there, just with a little asterisk on the side of the Montague boundary. So that's a full cost, and we will be splitting that 50-50 with the City of Ottawa's approval. It's on the next page at the bottom, but okay. Yes, it's we will be only seeing half of that cost there.
Okay, so we go a little further with what our money is really than what we're seeing here.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Especially this year with that. Yes.
So I guess the other question is, last year we kind of all decided that as a council that we wanted to maybe increase the amount of money we're spending on gravel. Is that kind of the consensus again this year? That we bring some of the more of these 4 rated condition roads maybe up to the forefront and get a couple more done, or I think that we should maybe attempt to try that, if that's at all possible.
A question?
Yes, Karen.
So what is their budget for 2020 on gravel compared to what this is showing for 2021 expenses?
So in 2020, we had about 230,000 in gravel. We had bumped it up from about 110. So this would continue the budget at around 200,000 for gravel, just under 200,000. So
Okay.
It's not quite as much as 2020, but similar idea.
Okay, perfect.
Claus?
Yeah, maybe I should have mentioned when I was talking about Pioneer Road, that should be earmarked for further discussion later on. We can red flag that one. If I may continue, just another one here. Carroll Road. I noticed you're doing some more on Carroll Road. Is this our portion split with Drummond North Elmsley, or we normally split the cost of Carroll Road, Drummond North Elmsley, do we not?
Yeah, Carroll Road would be split, but that's in 2024, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that where that is, Claus?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I just flipped over and the 2024 wasn't on top. Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, I'm going to Jeff and then to Ian.
I guess since Pioneer Road came up, I want to make that comment because I know we discussed it when we were hiring a new public works manager, and that discussion point of starting to go down Pioneer Road to look at how we can get the right road allowances so we can slowly work towards making that road correct, because right now we don't have the road allowances for Pioneer Road. So I want to make sure we had talked about that during the hiring process, and that's sort of like, not that, springing on Stephen now, but that's sort of that one of those things that I really would like him to be working on, is to be, going to the residents and going down that road and getting the right widths that he needs. I mean, McGuire's another road too as well. I think that's got to be one of our strategies. Like, same idea what Councillor Straight is saying. We're just pouring gravel on it. We want to have that start that plan. I think doesn't mean we're going to fix Pine Road that quickly, but yeah.
So Jeff, I totally agree, but as I think what we can do is still just defer that discussion to the capital part of our discussion.
100%. I'm just bringing it up because it was Pioneer Road was brought up in this discussion, so I'm just putting my sense there. So the other part was that I wanted to talk was more important. How does this snapshot here? You say you pulled it from the roads needs study, but the roads needs study has a different line of roads that are set up in that as far as being done. So were you taking more input from our guys in our feet in the ground, I guess you could say, on which ones could
absolutely.
be?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm doing and using. So it was more the site guy or the field guys were giving me their input on the roads they seen that should get gravel, and then using the conditions. So we're trying to keep our conditions up above, in the ideal world, we'd be up above 6. So we're trying to get all those 4s hit right away was the thinking on this chart.
So to follow up with that, Reeve.
Yes.
Yes. So how does that work into the? Because the nice thing about the roads need study is a working document. So how do we update the roads need study through that to show that as we're going through our forecasting that we did this road this year and that do you have that tracked, or how do you have that tracked? I guess just so we can have sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that would be on me to update on all the roads in 2020 that we completed, and as you can see at the bottom there, I haven't updated them yet. But they will be updated to say they were an 8 or whatever, and they have a better rating.
So we have like a supplementary document kind of stating that, just so we can kind of follow along to make sure we're on top of it and everything else. So okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thanks.
Okay, Ian.
That was actually my next comment was, we just did Carroll Road, and on here it's still rated as a 4. So I'm hoping that it's, in that 8 section. So, but you already said you're going to update it at the end of the year. So that'll, a nice live document to continue to work with.
Yeah.
So Stephen, we've had it has come up in a few discussions this year when we were talking about roads and so on, that certain roads were about reclassifying certain roads from whatever to whatever number. So I'm just wondering, if we reclassify a road, then does that jeopardize the amount of gravel we're going to need?
So I believe it was more the classification was on class 6 roads, Reeve. Was that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so it wouldn't change too much. No, not on this.
So at what point in our discussions should we be having a discussion about that somewhere along the line? Because, and is that going to affect our budget for this year?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jasmine.
no, it's just a question.
I think we do have an active direction in reviewing Ellen Maloney Road in terms
Yes.
of improving that road. I don't necessarily think the discussion of the classes of the road would necessarily have a budget impact on like a capital upgrade other than ones that we would want to say bring up to standard for development. But that's a much larger discussion we have to talk about when we bring that bylaw back.
Okay, then thank you. That's good. Thanks. So moving on, I think, Jeff, you have a question, and then Karen.
Oh, no.
I guess there's one side question, because I mean, we know we have surprises that come up through the year too as well. But what's the budget for like gravel for, I'm going to say surprises or stuff like that that comes up? If you know you have to do an extra road, or if you're going to like, is there something?
So basically, we'd have what we have here for a budget, and we'd so as they were looking at uphill today, something like that. I know it's not a lot of gravel, but that's a road maybe we could push to next year. Say that there was a road that came up that was more urgent. It would be going through our list and detailing which road we could maybe push to next year because it's still in okay condition.
So I guess because right now we have about 195, we'll say, that we'll budget for this year, or that looks like what it's going to cost. We're still going to budget like 230. I'm assuming that's what council kind of wants to do. So will that hopefully give you some breathing room, and maybe two as well?
Yeah. So if that's Jasmine, correct me if I'm wrong, but that'd be up to council to decide if you wanted me to put more roads forth, or we just go in at 230 with this plan I have, and then it gives us that slush in case there was a road to come forward. But that would be a council decision.
I like that idea. So
Did you want?
Sorry, we can do that, absolutely. And then we also do have a contingency reserve as well, if council wanted to touch on that.
We have a contingency. The contingency reserve is not specifically for gravel, is it, Jasmine?
Contingency reserve is just for contingencies.
anything, yeah.
Okay.
I'd almost budget extra for it. But,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Okay. I see. I have. I'm going to go to Karen, but I think I'll go first, if you don't mind, Karen, to Andrew. He may be able to help answer one of our previous questions.
Yeah, just in regards to that. So the actual budget for gravel for 2020 was $234,600. And right at the end of September, it was sitting at $210,000. So to answer Councillor Carroll's question, basically we satisfied the list, and we still had some room there for if there were extras that did come up that we didn't expect. So if we were to budget, like we say, around 225 or 230,000 in gravel, and then looking at the list being around 200,000, then we would have some contingency gravel money in that budget line.
So Karen, thanks, Andrew. Karen, and then to Ian.
Just following up though, uphill, I didn't think it was gravel.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
yes.
the last portion around the bend.
The last portion. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Got it.
Ian?
I think we definitely need to have that contingency in there, and I think that's a great way to go. I think that once you start doing some more investigation, Stephen, you'll find that a lot of these roads really need a lot more than just gravel on the top. They need the base redone and everything else, and you won't have any time. You won't have a hard time eating up that extra 20,000 that's sitting there.
Okay, then I see no other further questions on this section here. That's the whole gravel section, I guess, Andrew? So on to the next section?
That's right. And that brings us to the capital after that.
Yes, yes. So in the capital, we're right into back to administration then.
Right. So when we look at capital, I guess the overall thought process that goes with it is where the money is going to come from. So you potentially have a few options. You could either get it from tax, raising of taxes from what they currently are, or you can use it out of your reserves, which are existing, or you can look to using debt for that. So with the list here being fairly good size, that'll be something that I'll be at some point asking council if we were going to present the budget with all these items in it, then whether we want to prepare to present options for debt for that.
Sorry, I dropped my pen. Claus?
Yeah, just I'm just jumping down maybe halfway, Andrew. Public Works garage additional bay. Do you have a rough price in there?
So we could look at this in two different sections. The one section is the three buildings at the township property. So the Public Works, the administration, and the fire hall. Because there's going to be work being done to assess those, most likely those would happen in a future year beyond 2021. But I've put them in here anyways, in case council wants to discuss it and the possibility of doing it sooner. And then the other items in here that have prices are more specific that could potentially be done in 2021. So I didn't want to totally ignore those, that large concern of the buildings. The building condition assessment report definitely illustrated there's need to deal with those. So I haven't priced it because it's totally dependent on the options that council decides to take. And
so we under these capital departments, like we have four sections here: administration, fire, recreation, and public works. And I'm just wondering if we can kind of, rather than jumping all around, maybe if we could just dwell on the first one first, like administration, because we've got things like the roof replacement, the upgrades, meeting equipment, live streaming, computer, and so on. Are we able to just deal with that section first? Karen, could I?
Absolutely, that's that.
So Karen, could I start it off? You had your hand up. Hopefully you might have something to say about the first section there.
That's what it was.
Perfect.
So is that roof replacement just to do that peaked roof, the 100 to 150,000?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, Andrew.
Okay.
It's I'm hoping it doesn't cost that much, but right now it's a very, very rough estimate because it's all going to be dependent on how it works with the existing structure.
Okay, and we have everybody's yes again, Karen, please.
But that was something that we had to do in 2021 because of the amount of leakage that has happened. So it's something that does have to be in there.
Absolutely.
So some, as Andrew was saying, like some of these can wait till 2022, I guess. But you're right, Karen, this is something, so we may as well accept it now that it has to be for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first line there. Then we have administration building, upgrades, accessibility. Can you speak to that, Andrew, please?
It would be my expectation that probably will wait until the overall building is being assessed. Yeah. And but once again, I didn't want to just not bring it up for discussion in case there was questions or concerns.
And we have till 2025 for accessibility anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should definitely play into the overall big picture of all three buildings.
Okay, so if there are no other questions and comments then on the administration, we'll move on to the fire. So we have the fire hall.
For the meeting upgrades, I just wanted to note with council that I don't expect to spend the full $10,000, but we do need to, if we'd like to continue live streaming, and theoretically we will be meeting in person again sometime soon. we do need to make some upgrades. We're getting around a 1 meg upload speed at our township hall. So we're going to have a serious conversation about the upgrade to the township hall internet to be able to live stream effectively. And a good camera would be an essential component to that. I'm confident that we can tie into our existing sound system, but there may be some, cost for cabling and just getting that to set up. And there's also the option through iCompass, which I believe is $1,400, to sync the iCompass live streaming sync the live streaming with the iCompass. So to offer it through iCompass as well. So those options will be talked about in 2021. But I know council has talked about multiple times and have expressed interest in continuing to provide the live streaming for our meetings.
So I think what you're saying, Jasmine, then some of that third line, then it's definitely going to also be a 2021 budget.
Yeah, well, it's all 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, did I see another hand? No, okay. So we're going to move on to the fire capital. So I guess Andrew, and we have our chief here. So Chief Miles and Andrew, if you want to take over that part, please.
So yeah, Miles and I
hello,
went through his
Andrew,
fire budget with me, and he's given me preliminary. Cutting out a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the town internet at the admin building. So Miles and I went through the fire budget, and he's given me preliminary pricing on a tanker truck, and I listed that there, and then he may want to give you some more detail and background on that.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So I just wanted to give council a little bit of kind of the way, the directive that I'm looking to head in. So our tanker is a 1999, but it never came into service until 2001. So we will be looking to replace that tanker in 2022. But when I'm talking, I'm not looking to replace it. I think for the dollar value that we would receive from that truck as a surplus, I think it would serve our community much better to retain that truck and have 2 tankers in our fleet, so we're not calling as much mutual aid from other departments. As we were aware when we surplused our pumper, it was very minimal money. So I think our tanker would not be a replacement. I would be looking to add a new tanker in 2022, which again comes into a lot of play with our discussions of our building assessments. So I just kind of wanted to make council aware kind of where I think our best bang for our dollar would be. And that would be to keep our old tanker, but replace a new one in 2022.
Questions? Okay, then I think we're going to move on then
Jeff?
to the next.
Sorry, Bill.
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
So-
I couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to form it in my head before I put my hand up. Sorry. I guess like as far as the reserves and the capital for buying new trucks for the fire, does that mean that we need to put maybe more in reserves? Are we still on track for keeping our reserves right so we can buy this next tanker and still have money for the next thing that we're going to have to obviously replace in the fire department?
Andrew, did you want to touch base on that one?
Sure. So right now we're looking that at the end of 2020, that fire reserve to be sitting around 245,000. And then if we put in the same amount in 2021 as this year, it would be another 50,000. So we'd be getting close to 300,000 of the 340. So we are a little short at the moment.
And that's, sorry, follow up and that's just to buy this next And what's the, like, and maybe this is too early, but what's the next thing that needs to be replaced? And then we're gonna have to start accumulating for that. So like, are we getting behind the 8 ball at all? Like, as far as what we're gonna have to start looking at, like, if we're gonna talk about this, is like, do we need to be budgeting more? Like, should we be increasing what we're doing every year?
Yeah, good question, Jeff. My next unit to be replaced is a 2012 equipment truck, but keeping in mind, it doesn't fall under the 20-year category. So that truck is still, 10, 11 years away. So we're in pretty good shape once we replace this tanker in 2022 to purchase that in another 9 years.
So I'm going to go to Ian, please.
Yes, Chief, one of my questions is, from the time that you actually order it, when is arrival and when is full payment required?
So I would have to order probably in 2021, and it's a year delivery on most trucks right at the present time. I think we have to keep in mind, and I totally understand, my fire hall, where am I going to keep this? I'm sure that question is going to arise. So again, I just wanted to put a lot of notice out there for us to think about as a group, council to discuss, and then we can move on from there. I just don't want to buy a smaller truck and then 2 or 3 years down the road build a new facility, and there we are for another 20 years with a smaller truck than we really wanted.
Understandable.
Yes. Okay. And moving on, I think, did I see another hand? It's a little dark tonight. I don't know. No more? Okay. All right, then we're going to move on to the next section then, and that's the recreation. The recreation and the Rosedale septic system for $35,000. And as I was saying earlier, it was my assumption that council had decided that we would incur that cost, and we wanted to see that upgraded sooner than later. I guess I'm just going to go around and get consensus, maybe, if I could, from council regarding this one line of the 35,000, if that's okay. Or any questions first? I'll go to Jasmine and then to Jeff.
So we do have a request for quotations out right now. It closes on November 6th. So we'll be bringing a report probably on the 20th to let you know about the results of that request for quotation. So I think at that time, that would be a good time to discuss that.
Perfect.
It's likely that we wouldn't be looking at installation until in the new year anyway, in the spring, given that we're not going to be able to maintain a level of solids in a septic tank over the winter time with the use that we have, to make sure that we're running well with the bacteria and everything like that. So
great, thanks, Jasmine. And Jeff?
I was going to say, I know we've put it out for quotation. We haven't approved it to finish the job, and we're still obviously. We have one more grant we're gunning for too as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jasmine. Right, that could pay for a part of it.
So unfortunately, the Ontario Trillium Fund, which is the other grant, which was a possibility, it canceled their regular program for this year and is focusing only on not-for-profit and charities. So we're not eligible.
So there's nothing else right now for that, right? So it's
no.
All right. So okay, thank you.
Okay, then I had mentioned something earlier, Jasmine. Is this the time that I should bring this up about under recreation that I was talking about with the 22 acres and the possibility of expenses up there to do with possibly accessing our soccer field or doing any upgrading there? Or we may not even be ready to do that, but I didn't know whether there was any discussion needed or not.
Well, I think it's a good time to bring it up procedurally, but it's ultimately going to be up to council about what you want to see in the budget.
Yes, okay, so I'm going to start off. I'll go to Jeff and then to Karen, and possibly I saw Ian's hand maybe going up. So Jeff?
I was just going to say, like, I like the recreation feasibility study to kind of play its way out. And then that's going to bring up a year of discussions for 2021 as far as what is going to be going forth. And I don't see as, it'd be nice to do something next year, but I think also, I don't think COVID is going to make it easy for us either. So like for me, I mean, I want to move forward as quickly as we can, but I think the feasibility study, getting that through and then having those discussions next year, I think it'd be more into a 2022 sort of talk about exactly what you're looking at, Bill. So I agree with you, but I think that's sort of a 2022 thing.
Yes. Okay. Ian? No, I'm sorry. I guess it was Karen next.
That was my comment, though, is I thought this was part of the feasibility study that was taking place.
Yes. Okay. Thanks. And Ian?
Yeah, I'm on the same path. I guess it'd be nice to see what comes of the feasibility study, and then at the end of the day, you know, there is always the reserve that's there that if we wanted to do something or start something, then we can always, you know, proceed ahead.
I appreciate that, and I only brought it up thinking there may be something that could have been done. That it could have been something as simple as maybe maintaining the you know, the 22 acres a little bit more. Like we cut the grass once or twice, but should we be making it look a little bit better? There's an area there that is filled with water. Should that be filled in? I just wasn't sure whether we should start putting a little bit of money aside to do a little bit of money to start preparing for whatever we're going to do. But I appreciate the council's decision there. Jeff?
Yeah, and I agree. I think we want to keep our, you know, the reserves building up to as well. Like we've dedicated a good amount of money over the last couple of years more to reserves, and I hope we can kind of keep those levels the same too, because I agree, and that'll help us with that. So.
Okay, and then again, I guess going back to then capital and the recreation, have we finished our discussion about fencing? Did we finish our discussion about fencing at Rosedale Hall regarding, because that's capital and that's recreation? Did we finish? Do we need to address that at all, Andrew?
I guess my question, I do have a question. Is there types of fencing that you would want to see? And then, like in terms of pricing out fencing, is there something you want me to avoid?
I guess we should first. I don't think that council as a whole has actually decided that we really even want to, how much fencing we want there. So I'm not sure we know as a council what we want. So, you know, it needs more discussion maybe. I do have Claus and Ian.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I would agree. We need to have some more discussion, as Jasmine said, what type of fencing, how high, and how much of an area we're going to fence in. I guess the most popular is a chain link. It's the easiest to do. But the question I have, if we put fencing around, what is the purpose of putting the fencing around? And who's going to maintain it if there is any damage ever done to it and so forth? And are we going to put a gate there and lock it?
I would expect, well, we would be the one that would be maintaining it. And I would expect that in order to achieve accessibility and you know, access, there'd probably be an open section facing interior to like the Rosedale Hall rather than the roadside. Rather than a gate.
Okay, I think next was Ian.
I think that when we're getting the price, from my point of view anyway, is we're getting the price on the fencing. I think that we look at, you know, breaking up into two pieces of recreation and the rest of the property. And that way, just when you bring it back, we can make a decision on that point in time. I'm sure there's some different types of fencing the fencing contractor can offer up. Maybe have some different suggestions for. You know, probably spruce the place up a little bit. Maybe if you got rid of the 2.5-inch gas pipe that was painted out all around the front of it. You know, that's just a thought.
Yeah. So I can bring back some options in terms of like the area to be fenced and the type of fence then.
That's
so
my.
Sorry, Ian. So then this we're just red flagging for now then, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, then, seeing
Jeff?
no other, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, just a key on the fencing, because I mean, that's a huge discussion, because it could be partially just a blockade just to help with, like, obviously the roads and the play structure, but also there's the farm, that the horse farm that's on the back of it too as well, that you know, we want to make sure that there's do we need to look at something there? There's a concern there of being things, you know, being fed to the horses and all that kind of stuff. Is there a concern that we need to have, and there's an electric fence there. Should there be a barrier there too as well between that horse farm and our yard too as well? That's been brought up too as well. So where's the liability if something happens or something is fed to those horses that's you know, not on their, I'm gonna say their diet, but you know, we want to make sure that there's no extra problems, I guess, down in as the years go on. So.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Okay, then, seeing no further questions, I think, Andrew, I'll give it back to you then. On to Public Works.
Okay, so for Public Works Capital, we've got a few different items for a few different reasons. The first one is the half-ton truck. It's there because it was deferred in 2020. So we're putting it back on the list for 2021. The next two things have to do with sort of the proposed capital schedule and the fact that there's been quite a bit of excuse me, maintenance issues with the wheeled excavator, and some options that might come out of that. And then for roads, Mclaughlin Road is one specifically that we know needs some attention. And then I've just put a summary of the road needs study Appendix D, which sums up to about $200,000. And the last one on that page, the culvert at Richardson Road, it's just had a OSIM inspection and it's in quite serious need of repair. So that's why it's on the list. And if you were to ask when it needed to be done, the answer is immediately, or, you know, should have already been done. So that's why when we're prioritizing tonight, that's one that would most likely stay on there for the 2021 budget. And the following page was a breakdown of the expected cost of repair for that. And from there, I would say that Stephen and I, we've discussed this, and he could give you some more background and information in regards to and those items, specifically the excavator and the grader.
So before we go to you, Stephen, I have a question from Karen.
So on the half-ton truck, that's just a savings out of this year's budget since it wasn't purchased that will go towards next year's cost?
Yeah, I think when we look at the snowplow and the 3-ton, the amount we had allocated was a little bit shy. So I think at a council meeting, it was decided to wait on that truck until the next budget cycle.
But the money was in this year's budget, so it's just going to be rolled as a savings from this year into next year.
Essentially, yeah. Yeah.
Claus?
It stayed in reserves, and then we'll come back out of reserves.
So Claus, I'll go.
Yeah, question to Steve. How old is the wheeled excavator? Do you know?
So I'm actually going to make a suggestion. I'm going to make a suggestion that before we go into questions about that, I think Steve does have some items to note about both the wheeled excavator and the grader. So before we move on to questions, I think it's important for that to be discussed first. So
no problem.
So yeah, it does state in the replacement to have the grader replaced this year with the wheeled excavator replaced, I believe, in 2 years from now. This year we've gone way over with the wheeled excavator on repairs. Constantly every week things are going wrong to start. So we've replaced about 20,000 worth already this year. A couple issues on the Rise. When talking to the guys, the transmission is extremely weak and it's going to require some attention shortly. They've stated that the odd time it will not go into reverse, so they'll be stuck in an unsafe position somewhere, which is a health and safety issue there. It's estimated that could cost somewhere in the ballpark of $30,000 just to have that repaired. Now the tires, they're all going to need replaced within, say, a year. They're all getting very bad. Along those lines, as well as the rims, the lugs keep backing off constantly, require some attention from the guys. So those are going to have to be replaced. The hose lines, there's been many hose lines that have been needed to be replaced in the past couple of months. And the mechanic has stated that there's some critical lines that go internally that are going to soon need attention, which is going to be a high labor cost to repair these lines. So it's just another thing that is going. And then another thing that came up was a swing bearing, which is on the bottom of the shovel, which allows it to maneuver in circle movement. It's going to need some replacement in 1 to 2 years as well, which will be another high item. So our idea was to be greater a year and move the rubber tire shovel up, as it's going to require a whole bunch of costs very shortly, whereas the grader is in good condition and we see that it could last beyond this year.
Questions? Ian?
So last
sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
So last year, Stephen, just kind of we had talked about hours and usage and everything else like that. We were supposed to implement something that would kind of track that. Has that occurred? Do we know?
I can follow up on that, but I do know the guys say it's around 8,000 hours. And around that time is when many of the critical components on machinery start to break down. So it is at near the end of its life. But if that answers your question there, Ian, it has been tracked for hours wise.
Well, I'm just wondering, so when did we purchase it?
I'm not sure on that. I can follow up unless Jasmine or
I do
Andrew
not
have
know.
that.
We can get that information though.
Okay. That would probably go a long way for myself, I guess. My question is, with 8,000 hours, if it's been here for 10 years, that's not a lot of hours really to be put on a piece of equipment. So at that point in time, is it cheaper to decide what it is that you want to do and subcontract out, with those hours to somebody with one of these pieces of equipment? We don't have to worry about running it, operating it, or maintaining it.
That, if I can go ahead here, a thought we've had when talking to the guys in some other municipalities is exactly what Ian's stating. It would be to replace the rubber tire shovel with actually a backhoe with a couple components that will allow us to, we can still do some ditching jobs, some small culvert jobs, and maybe an option would be to either lease a rubber tire or rent a rubber tire for somebody for the ditching operations in the bigger culverts. So that's definitely something we've been considering and just looking for council input on those items.
Okay, Claus?
Thank you, Ray. I certainly agree with the fact of doing away with the wheeled excavator. It's basically done from what you're telling me. And I think a backhoe would be far more useful for us for some of the jobs that we do than the township rather than, and if we need to rent a wheel excavator, if they're available to rent, that's my other question too. Are they out there to rent? And,
absolutely, they are.
They are. Yeah. Okay. So I certainly would agree to go ahead and gain the backhoe for this year.
So then, I guess, Stephen, then can you just remind us under the public works, when we're trying to prioritize, then out of these expenses here, then what are the top priorities that we should definitely put on for the first draft when the budget comes to us?
The priority number one would be replacing that wheeled excavator before it incurs any more cost for us.
Okay.
And then the half-ton truck, it is in need of a replacement as well. It's hasn't,
okay,
knock on wood, had any problems, major ones, but it's with an aging vehicle, you know how that works.
And the grader we can put off for this year? That's
right. It's from talking with Daryl, the lead hand, we believe it would be pushed off till 2022, and it's running great right now, and it would handle the year.
And then what about the last the two roads there, Mclaughlin and the Mclaughlin Road, the shared road with Beckwith?
Yeah, so Mclaughlin, I believe it was actually it's in very bad shape. I talked to their public works manager in Beckwith. He stated he agrees it's in bad shape. He'd like to put it in their budget as well to have it replaced. So it'd just be kind of full rebuild of that road. The scope we're not 100% sure on right now. I'll talk to Beckwith, see how much they want to do, if they want to go full or whereabouts there. The 200,000, so that would actually be 100,000 for Montague. It would be the 50-50 cost as well. And then the Appendix D, that gets into what the roads need study states. Right now, in 2021, they state they would like Adirano. There's a bunch of roads in the subdivisions that they have slated. A couple options for council would be, to follow that, or to have a report brought back from staff on what other roads may be more critical and are used more. So like what roads are traveled far more with the average daily traffic on each road. So is it to go towards one of those roads instead, or to follow the plan and go into the subdivisions for the capital works?
So, but as far as Mclaughlin Road is concerned, is it possible that you could consult with Beckwith again to get some kind of assurance that they want to do it in 2021? Because then if that was the case, then council may decide to leave that in as a top priority. If they weren't going to, then we wouldn't probably want to do that this year maybe. And the other thing is, I was going to ask about the last one there under the roads. That was under the culvert, that 250,000, and you're saying that it really should have been replaced yesterday, sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So is that a $250,000 line that you feel we should be leaving in for this year's budget?
Out of the bottom three for the roads, I believe that Mclaughlin and the culvert are absolutely critical to be done this year.
Okay. So further questions then from anybody? Claus?
Steve, just a quick question. Mclaughlin Road, how many kilometers shared with Beckwith? How many?
It's just roughly, it's about a kilometer, I believe, from 15 to Rosedale Road North of the asphalt portion of that.
Okay, just that section area with their
the east, yes.
East, yeah, I know it's real bad. It's real bad. Okay.
Yes.
Karen?
I was just wondering, with the situation we're in right now, but are there any grants available for any of our work that we're looking at for Public Works?
Not to my knowledge, Aaron. I will. I'll look into that for us.
Okay. So anything else? Any further questions? Jeff?
I guess for the capital side of the roads, I mean, I'd like us to try to follow the roads need study as much as possible. I mean, we paid for that. It should be a good blueprint for us. I mean, if we're deviating a lot away from that, then I would question what we just basically got out of the roads need study. So I'm kind of hoping that's going to be your blueprint. The other side of it is we have I don't want to call them our dream roads, but basically like there's the priority roads that's in the roads need study, and I'd like us to be kind of talking about how we're going to address those ones, and I think that kind of leads to what Councillor Jennings is saying about the grants and everything else too as well. Is how can we key on some of those roads, or which ones are really bad that we can look at as far as trying to go after grants and everything else to fix those roads, and maybe looking at what the safety concerns are with certain roads. I mean, I don't want to pick on roads and say like that's the one I want to do, but I mean, I'll use one that I know has come up in a lot of discussion is like Code Drive, where it's it's definitely a road that has a lot of houses on it that it needs some sort of upgrade, and we don't really have a great plan for that over the next 10 years, except for in that priority roads area. Let's start knocking away at those roads and seeing what we can get for money, obviously on the grant side of it, and then what we can maybe start budgeting towards too as well. I hope council kind of got that's why we put those priority roads in there. So
which kind of brings me back to the discussion we were having about Pinery, but I guess, Jasmine, I'd like to ask you, Jasmine, is this a good time to spend a few minutes talking about these type of roads that Jeff is talking about? We have got Code, we've got Pinery, but because I do remember it might have been at least two councils ago where we said that we had three top priority roads, and one was a short one, Brown Road, which we dealt with right away, and they did a beautiful job. The other two roads that were the two highest priority roads at the time was Holbrook and Pinery. But that was very complex because it wasn't just about gravel. It was about excavating and putting a good surface down first. It was about acquiring land from landowners, which we've mentioned tonight. It was about ditching. It was about brushing. The problem with Pinery is that we need to acquire land, and we need to brush it and ditch it, and then you start building it. And so now we brought up about a couple of other roads. So Jasmine, I guess, could you speak to that, please, about where we should work that in?
So I think we could have that discussion tonight. I believe Councillor Carroll is noting Appendix F in the roads need study, which does detail what are kind of considered our very high cost priority roads, which is replacing existing with existing. That's not to say that Pinery couldn't be considered, but Schedule F does refer to a number of roads in which we don't have necessarily the funds to even maintain as their current status. So Code Drive, their full depth reconstruction, to address the fact that the condition rating by 2029 is going to be under 4, is going to be $1.2 million. So those would be the type of things that we would want to pursue grant funding for. You know, Rosedale Road North, the full depth reconstruction, you know, it's also going to hit a low condition rating. Mclaughlin Road currently is at a 2, so that is actually, Mclaughlin Road is actually on one of our priority roads. So the discussion of the upgrade from gravel to different types of, to treating, and that long-term discussion of the acquisition of land and stuff like that is a little bit of a bigger discussion. It is, as Andrew did note earlier in his presentation, it is part of our strategic plan. It is a deliverable for our strategic plan to develop a long-term strategy for paving and tar and chipping high-use roads. And I know that our Public Works department as a total has been working on gathering up-to-date traffic counts on all of our roads with the tools that we have right now. So in terms of the priority roads in Appendix F, we could talk about that now if there's any that council want to consider in the budget process as extras. I think maybe the larger discussion might be like an item that we need to bring forward.
So I have Ian and Jeff. Ian?
I think that, I think this is something that we should have a conversation with or about, but I think that we've got lots in there right now. Let's let Andrew kind of put that into the budget and see where we all kind of spin out at the end of the day. And, start there, and then if there's extra left, we can have these conversations. Pinery Road, I know it's not in the appendix, but when at our previous term of council, it was brought to our attention that that's a multi-million-dollar, $2 million plus road to have repaired and fixed up. So I know it's not on there, and we're talking about dollars and cents, it's probably one of the most expensive roads within the township to fix at this point in time. Unless something has changed.
And I think one of the reasons why there was even discussion in previous years of spending more money there was because it was being developed quite a bit more. And as we know that I think one development of maybe 8 houses went in there over a period of a year or two. So there was a lot more traffic. If I could just mention one more road that maybe this council, and I know the previous one or two councils talked about, was out on Mcguire Road. And there's a problem on the problem on Mcguire Road is what we call Linton Hill. And hopefully most people know where Linton Hill is. It's where the hydro poles come right up to the road almost. It's very, very narrow. It's very narrow for our snowplow and so on. And we were actually going to try to excavate and take that hill out, but we were going to have to getting back again to acquiring land. We weren't successful in being able to acquire land to the next door neighbor, but that could happen possibly now because that was a few years ago. But the thing is, I know eventually we may want to do something more on Mcguire Road, but we can't until we take out this hill. One of the problems was that there were, I think, 6 hydro poles too close to the road. They were going to have to be moved at $10,000 each plus. And that's why we were looking at acquiring a bit of land. So I'm just saying, putting that kind of on the radar as something that, again, could be talked about in the future. So I like the idea, I think yours of being there about coming and waiting till the next meeting when we can deal with what we've got on the table, and then see what the bad news is going to be at the end, and what it's all going to cost, and then see if there's anything left for any other roads. So now, I guess, any other further discussion on this? Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, so thanks Jasmine for that's exactly where I was getting at was Appendix F, is because we had put those roads on there. They're not gravel roads. These are just our paved or tar and chip roads that we're trying to look at. What I'd like to see is more our roads guys to kind of come back and say, you know what, this is the first one we should be picking on, and we might be able to get grants because there's definitely safety issues here. There's definitely the connecting road issues here that can be a huge benefit. So I mean, I think our guys in the roads should be able to know which ones we might be able to go after a little bit, I guess now, and what can wait a little bit longer. But since Pinery Road was brought up again too as well, and Mcguire too as well, I think it goes back to is we can't do the ditching and all that work that we want to do until we have the rights to it. And it's to go back is that one of Stephen's mandates should be to start working with the landowners and everything else to get that access. So then exactly the next time that when we're moving forward, we can start to look at that down the road. But right now, even if we were given money, I don't think we could do anything with Pioneer Road because we don't have the access for it. So that's got to be the first and foremost thing that we have to do right now. And same idea with Mcguire. So I mean, we need to get that sort of first. Until then, we're putting gravel down to kind of maintain what we have.
So that's great, Jeff. But just to clarify, one of the previous councils we did on Pinery Road exactly what you're saying, suggesting. And we were successful in acquiring land from possibly more than 1 or 2 residents there. So we did purchase land, we did straighten the road, and we did upgrade the road. So, but it's a long road, as we all know. So we did that. It's just a matter of, I feel that we have to continue that. And that's a great idea for Stephen to look at and maybe start working with the landowners. Because that doesn't have to cost a lot of money, because we were doing a contra where they gave us land and we straightened the road and ditched it and maybe put up a fence. So those are projects that don't have to necessarily cost a lot of money.
It's a benefit to them. Yes, you're losing maybe a piece of your land, but there's a benefit of a better road in the end, right? Yeah. So I'd like to think that if approached properly, which I have all the trust that Stephen can do, is that we're going to be able to. People will be, yes, we want to see improvements. So this is the way we have to do it. I mean, if we hit roadblocks, so to speak, as we go, let's deal with them. But I mean, that's got to be the direction if we want to continue with that road. So,
well, we were successful for a short part of it there. So that was, I like the idea of continuing.
Just let's continue with it. Exactly. Yeah.
I think maybe Ian, did you have something first and then to Andrew?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to go right along with what you said there, Reed Dobson, is that, we had some luck before getting some land and we made the improvements. And, unfortunately, at the end of the day, we have to look at the health and safety of our residents that travel that road. And, there's going to be instances where we may have to expropriate some land to make sure that the road is wide enough and it's safe enough. Like right now, there's parts of Rosedale or Primary Road that the school bus and the snowplow can't pass each other. And there's probably no other road in our whole township where that even exists. There's blind corners. Like it's a significant safety issue. Not only that, there's a tremendous amount of traffic on it.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew.
I was just thinking, road widening is a requirement of severance, I believe. Is that right? So if people were severing properties on Pinery, and then it would sort of organically work itself out as well along, over time. But I can see where speeding up the process would be even better. But and sounds like we're going to look high and low, for see what grants are out there right now to hopefully pursue for these things.
But you're right about the severances, and that could also work possibly on Mclaughlin Road.
So I just want to note that we do obtain the road allowance piece to get the road to 33 feet from the center line, 66 feet if it's on both sides of the road, on every severance on a road that might be undersized.
Yeah.
It's our practice. So we've been acquiring land on pretty much every road in which a road is undersized since I've been here at the minimum.
Okay, then moving on. Is there anything else then, Andrew?
From there, essentially, just given a subtotal that there is quite a list of capital. We've already identified a couple things that won't have to be priority, that can be deferred. From that point, like I had just said, we'll be looking high and low for grant money to see how what's out there that could be applied to these things. And my only other point might be just to try to target our next meeting date when it's time to wrap up the meeting tonight.
Yes. Okay. So do you need us to try to pick a meeting date tonight?
Well, I just wanted to tentatively say, like, would council be available a month from now, say the end of November, or if council feels that's too soon, then we could look at early December, but more likely it'd be early January. So my first suggestion would be a month from now, late November, to try to set a budget meeting that hopefully I can have a first draft prepared for.
Well, I'm just going to go around and see if we have consensus to have a meeting in the last week of November. Karen, how about you?
Yes.
Ian?
Yep.
And Jeff?
Yeah, that's fine.
And Klaus?
Yes, I just have a couple of questions, if I may.
I'll come to you next then. But
okay,
I'll come to you next, Klaus. And so, right. Andrew, then I guess you can pick the day and let us all know then. Or do you want to just?
Yeah, I imagine we'll send you an email and see if everyone's available. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, Klaus, back to you.
Yeah. Okay. Two things then, Andrew. For 2021 capital, 1.836. Is this what you're projecting?
That's a summary of what's in this report. And
do we all feel comfortable with that?
And already, like, we'll be removing the grader and a couple other things from that list, so it'll start to go down. And that's where I was going to ask council for direction on whether council wants to try to remain within the reserves or have staff bring options for if they wanted to borrow and use debt for their capital budget.
Would it be better for us to have that discussion at our next meeting when we see what the results are of what we've talked about tonight?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Unless council has any, if council wishes to speak to that, that's fine. But, you know, we don't have all of the facts right now, and we've had a good discussion, but I think it would mean more if we talked about it at the next meeting. But any comments from council on that?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. So I think that's everything for tonight. Yes, Jeff?
Sorry, I just had a couple questions for Stephen. Sorry, as I was kind of going through the for the traffic counters. Are you getting a pretty good sort of up to date list of the, like, are we still getting good usage of that? I know there was times months ago that we were there was some problems with it and we weren't using it. I don't know if there was an updating software. There was a problem with it, had to be fixed. You know, if, anyways, are we getting good updates on that?
So, Stephen?
Yep, we're getting it back out on the road here. There was an issue with it, and then it just kind of fell into the hiring process and everything like that. We are getting it back out, and there's also another traffic counter system that we have that is actually broken right now. I'm going to get in touch with who we have that off of. It's just the typical ones the county has that goes across the road. So we're going to obtain that as well, and, you know, get them out on 2 roads at a time and just the amount of volume we're getting.
But that's good, because we obviously want to have that thing out as much as possible, because it also helps us a speed deterrent too as well. But I mean, that data is really going to be key for us, and that's why we want to go with it. The other one too as well, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but it's just something that's going to come up as we go. And it's that the mesh system that we started using a couple of years ago. I'm more curious about sort of your familiarity with it, and then also like, and if we're going to discuss that in the budget, because it's going to be another charge for again this year. Like I said, I'm not trying to put you on the spot whatsoever. It's more in the sense of the understanding of it and the usefulness of it, I guess, in the future.
Yeah, I think.
You want me to handle this one?
Yeah, I think that's.
Jasmine, please.
Unfortunately, through part of the year, we were getting no uptake on the use of the system, and it wasn't being used. So we've switched to a different system. So it's not mesh, but it's a similar work order system, which is much cheaper, and we're getting much more uptake on it by the guys. So it's a system that's through our GIS system, through our mapping. So we can map the complaints, and we still have a work order system and a complaint mapping, but it goes through email, through processes that were already being used, and there's much more uptake from the guys.
Yes, Jeff?
So so we're changing from the mesh system. Now, when we buy the mesh system, there was a pretty good cost, because there was like some tablets and stuff like that came along with it. So are those usable still, or are they?
We were essentially renting them. We didn't have to buy them offhand.
Oh, those initial charges weren't buying it. They was just renting them.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I thought the original thing was the buying of those. That original $15,000 someone was buying it. So okay.
That wasn't my understanding, because we had to return them. So
the mesh system is now gone entirely. Okay, I'd be curious of the new system, like not now obviously, but just sort of an update of how that's being done. Yeah. Anyways, okay. Thank you.
Ian?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go along with Councillor Carroll there. I'd like to have an idea what the new system looks like as well. And is there any cost savings, hopefully?
yes, there is absolutely. We're saving about I think mesh was 8,500 a year.
There's $8,000 a year, yeah.
So we're saving about $6,000 a year.
Oh, great. Perfect.
Yes.
It just,
okay.
Sorry.
Yep. Yes. Yes.
I mean, it sorry, Reeve, through you. Sorry. That obviously doesn't do as much as the mesh system, but basically it does what we probably truly need.
It tracks the work order system, and it tracks the processes, and it gets the complaints to the guys with locations, and gives us an ability to track and monitor and provide feedback on complaints and where we're getting complaints and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I think then we're at the end of our agenda points. Jeff?
There was one. Sorry, there was one more. Sorry again. Yeah.
Go ahead.
we might as well talk about it early. Tax rates for for the future, for next year. I mean, I'm a big advocate of trying to make sure that we maintain our tax rate. So not to put you under the gun, Andrew, but obviously the first draft, I'd be hoping for we're looking at a 0% tax increase on our side. So
100%.
I think we'll have to get consensus there first, but we don't know until we have our next meeting where we're going to end up. So we could be way over the amount that we're thinking. So Claus, and then to Karen.
Since we're throwing out opinions of the tax rate, if you go with zero tax rate, you're going backwards every year. Not a good idea.
Karen.
Mine's not budget. Mine just isn't bringing that up. So this is our last week for waiving penalty and interest, as well as waiving garbage stickers, is it not?
Yep.
Right. It changes as of November 1st.
Both taxes. So taxes have interest and penalty, and garbage stickers start again next week.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Ian.
For what it's worth, I agree with Councillor Carroll. We had a significant tax increase a few years ago, and 0 is the target number for me.
Yeah, we need to get back in line.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, the thing is, to the point of we need to get back in line. We've had a 0 increase for 5 years. So we've been in line for 5 years.
Sorry.
Claus.
For, just some information from the county's point of view, you won't see a 0 tax increase coming from the county or the school board. So how can we have a 0 tax increase when we're going to get hit with a tax increase from those two major areas?
I do see a hand from Andrew, and then to Ian.
I was just going to say, when I look at the operating budget, I don't see any significant increases showing up there that would directly impact the tax rate at this point. But I would think of it more from the perspective of if you were to decide to do a tax increase, that it would say be directed towards your reserves, building your reserves. So that's just a thought that I would approach when we look at the first budget. But like you said, once we input everything, we'll have a much closer idea of where we're at.
Well, I personally think it's better to be having that discussion when we know what the end result of where we will be at our next meeting. So, Claus, please, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm based on Andrew's statement there. If we do have a tax increase, putting it towards reserves, because we're embarking on to doing some major projects with our buildings over the next 3 or 4 years. Yeah. So the more we can build our reserves to put towards those projects, the better it would be.
Okay, Ian.
For the two gentlemen that are sitting on the county council, I think that it's time that we start to tighten the waistband a little bit. Every year we get an increase pretty much from them. So,
yeah, Claus.
To answer to that, the waistband has been tightened extremely. You'll probably hear about in the next couple of days. There was a confidential meeting last night, which I can't share, but you'll hear about some major cost savings from the county in the next couple of days.
So there's a 0 increase then? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I'm not telling you that. I'm just saying you're talking about tighten up the waistband. They tightened up the waistband extremely last night.
Okay, so I think we're at the end of our agenda, and we've had that discussion. But before we go to our next resolution, Jasmine, I think I'll go to you and ask if we have any questions from the public.
Give me 1 second.
No problem.
I have no questions.
Okay, then I do have a motion. Before we do this motion, I just want to thank Andrew for all of your work for the whole budget. And also to Stephen and Miles, who were with us, and Jasmine. So between all of you, you've made our job, I think, tonight pretty easy. And I also want to thank council. We've had a great meeting and a lot of discussion, and we've moved forward. I think it was fairly high level, and I just appreciate that. So thanks to everybody, and especially to our staff who have helped us immensely in this. So I do have a motion that council provide input and direction on items to be included in the 2021 draft budget at the next budget meeting. And I need a mover and seconder for that, please. So that is moved by Karen and seconded by Jeff. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And also, then I guess that's it for now. And I need a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting. So moved by Karen and seconded by Claus. That this meeting do now adjourn at 7:47 p.m. All in favor? That is carried. So thank you, everybody, and good night.
Night.
We'll see you at the next meeting. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks, Gavin.
Good night,
Thanks, Andrew.
everybody.
Thanks. Thanks, Chief Garrett.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the 3 is 1, 2, 3.